Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink I have in sample form, and it's by K.W.Z, a manufacturer from Poland. And I recently received a giant bag of samples from them. This is one of the little 2 milliliter vials. And K.W.Z is getting a lot of attention because they're producing a lot of what are called Iron-Gall inks. If you would like to learn more about Iron-Gall, what it is, what it does, how it works, look in the description down below. I'll try and remember to add a link to my video about K.W.Z Iron-Gall Gold. That has a bit more information about it and some educational links there as well. So I'm going to go into this assuming that you know what Iron-Gall is and how it works and what it does. So this one will maybe be less than half an hour. But yeah, so this is Gummiberry. Fun name. And it's purple. So it's an Iron-Gall. Iron-Galls are known for resisting water. And you do have to be more diligent about cleaning out your pen because, you know, iron and gallic acid. But yeah, I actually got a second sample of this in a recent care package, again from the wonderful, mysterious benefactor. Let us all thank him for a moment. He certainly deserves it. And so I actually managed to do a second little test for this. And I put it in a 2.3 pilot parallel. A lot of fun. So the 2 pens I used were these. This is a Nemosine Singularity. It's a Singularity. It has a 0.6 stub, so a fairly small stub, and as you can probably tell because you can't see through those tines, this is actually quite dry writing, so this is my sort of going easy on it nib pen. And this is a JinHao X750. Now all my X450s have been pretty broad and pretty wet, but my 750s have been pretty standard. They're a very basic medium. They're not wet, they're not dry, they're just very middle of the road. Although I should say European medium. Alright, now as I said, Iron-Gall inks are known for being water resistant, so I wanted to see what this could hold up against. Now, this had been on the page, this big smear had been on the page I think maybe 10 minutes, so this really is worst case scenario. As you can see, the water really got the purple moving, but you can still see all that gray underneath. You can even see the shading in it. So, 1/3 bleach solution. Again, bleach is an oxidizer. Oxygen plus iron. You get the idea. It turned that purple almost like a highlighter blue, but like a hazy highlighter blue. And if anything, it just sort of darkened the gray. Now, ammonia, very similar. Washed away most of that purple, didn't turn it blue, but that gray got pretty solid, pretty dark. Now hydrogen peroxide, it kind of got it moving, it kind of broke it up, but it kind of just also made it seep back into the page when I soaked it up. So yeah, as always, my advice for cleaning any ink out of any pen is just lots and lots and lots of water. But yeah. Speaking of water resistance, I actually did several chromatographies, so we'll start with this one. This is how you're supposed to do it. You put a line of ink and instantly drop it in the water. And you can definitely see where that initial drop was put. It's kind of like a hazy gray-purple. A little bit of that going up. Then you get much more distinct purple, and then you get this blue, strange line up at the top, which is just the water picking up a little bit of the iron in the ink. And that's actually the last bit to show up. Now, here's where I let it dry, like I normally do, which is not how you're supposed to do it. And you can definitely see that the dot got darker, and that there's sort of more purple mixed in through there. And there's blue, and you still get that little line at the top. But I expected the dot to be darker, so I started to let them dry even longer, because this was, I didn't dunk this one in water until this had dried. So yeah, maybe 10 minutes. Now this one I let dry for 24 hours. See how dark that dot got? And there's much less of that gray. It's more of a light hazy purple. Then there's blue, and you don't really see much of that line up at the top. And for fun, I decided to let this one dry for 3 days. Really not much of a difference. So, but yeah. My point is, when you leave Iron-Gall inks on the paper, the longer you give them to dry and to really bond with the paper fibers, the more water resistant it'll be. Now, most of these tests I did after the tests had been dry, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour at most. So again, it's kind of a worst case scenario. Now, I wanted to show you some comparable inks. So here, and these are comparable in color, not necessarily comparable in waterproofness or any of that. So here's Gummiberry, and here's Noodler's Kung Chang, which is much more of a bluish purple, maybe a bit lighter. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I thought there were two stuck together. Here's Diatramentis Document Dark Blue, which again is maybe a little bit more of a blue purple, but this one is also very water resistant. That's from their Document line of inks. And here is another semi-permanent ink, or actually I'd mostly could just call it permanent and very waterproof. It's a Noodler's ink for Wonder Pens in Canada. It's Blue Upon the Plains of Abraham. And it's kind of purpley, but mostly it's blue with hints of red throughout. But anyways, I thought that would be an interesting comparison. And finally, Diamine Eclipse, which is a purple so dark it's almost black at times when you're writing with it. But again, I think that it's just it's a little darker, and maybe it's a little bit more blue. On to the paper test. Top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. Yeah. Personally, I really love dark and kind of like dusty, you know, like hazy purple. So this was seriously my kind of purple. You do get some shading, as you can see. You don't really get any sheen. You don't really get much of a halo, but I mean, it looks good. It's a nice purple. Now that 0.6 stub took 10 seconds to dry. The X750 took 18, but you can see that there's a lot of ink in this ink. You see how solid that color is? Doesn't look watery, doesn't look undersaturated. And Iron-Galls do tend to take longer to dry just because there's more stuff in that ink. Very well behaved, there's no bleeding, no feathering, no spread. I don't think there's any echo, and I consider myself very sensitive to that, so. But yeah, here's the water test. Again, this test had been on the paper maybe 30 minutes. But look at how clear that is. Did it get lighter? Yes. Did it stay purple? Not so much. It stayed mostly gray. Look, it didn't feather, didn't explode. The more ink you put down, the more remains, and you can definitely see this X750 was darker because there was more ink. So, yeah. Next up is Fabriano. It's 85 grams per square meter. Lately, it's my favorite paper. It tends to be able to handle inks that other papers can't. Now that 0.6 stub took 11 seconds to dry. The X750 took 25, which was a little surprising. That's a big increase in dry times for that X750, but honestly for an Iron-Gall, that was more along the lines of what I was expecting. Now you can see there is some very distinct shading, but also, I don't know if this is sheen so much as just shiny, or it's laid on really thick, but it's kind of interesting. It's like a black matte shine going on. As you can see, very lovely shading. I very much enjoyed the shading of this ink. It's a lovely dark, sort of dusky purple. Well behaved, there's no bleed, no feather, no spread. And look at how dark this can get when you lay it on really thick. It's almost black. I wouldn't say there's any echo, and I consider myself pretty sensitive to it, but again, that's always to taste. Now, this had been on the paper somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. Look at how dark and clear that is. That is very readable. It did dye the paper just a little bit. Yeah, it did get a bit lighter, and yeah, it turned more gray and lost a lot of the purple, but honestly, if you had to recover that, you absolutely could. I can't imagine how much of this would be left if I gave it longer than 30 minutes to dry. I'd be impressed, I know that much. Next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. We see a little bit less shading than we did on Fabriano, but it's still really not bad. That 0.6 stub took 8 seconds to dry. That X750 took 20. You do get very distinct shading. You kind of get the matte, but it's kind of all throughout the scrubby, which was weird. But yeah, really lovely shading. Quite enjoyed that. Lovely color. But yeah, again, no bleed, no feather, no spread. I really don't think there's any echo, but that could be the quadrilateral paper. You know, the lines hiding it, but yeah. Again, water test. Looks pretty good. It's not so much purple, and it did get a bit lighter, but that is very clear, very there, didn't feather, didn't explode. Looks good. Look at those dots. So dark, so clear. Lovely. Next up is Tomoe River paper, which is very thin and tends to bring out shading and sheen. So if an ink can shade or sheen, it'll do it here. But yeah, it's very thin, and since this ink can get quite dark, we do kind of maybe have an echo thing to look out for. But see, when you hold it off the paper, it's really not so bad. And this scrubby, I think it's because I was laying it on kind of thick, because I wanted to see if I could get some more of that shine, which I certainly did. Yeah, so maybe some of that, this kind of sheen, I really don't know. It's sort of like a matte black shine. It's cool, but yeah. This paper is also known for drawing out dry times, which it did. Yeah. That 0.6 stub took 17 seconds, and that X750 took 30. I generally stop counting at 30, but honestly, with this ink, since I would say it's just slightly wet, I'd say it's a 5.5 out of 10, and it's an Iron-Gall, which means there's a lot of stuff in this ink. I am not surprised. Not really. Now that by the time I got into this paper, I was like, it kind of makes sense. Would I like it to be shorter? Yes, yes, I would. But I'll take it. I was enjoying it. Again, really lovely shading. It's a soft shading in the writing. You know, it's very gradual and well behaved. You know, there's no bleed, no feather, no spread. But I mean, Tomoe River just doesn't do that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And actually, okay, let's get to the water test because this is great. Now, this ink had been on this paper, I'd say just 20 minutes, if anything. So that 0.6 stub, look at how clear that is. Did it get lighter? Yes. Did they lose the purple? Yes. But look at how clear and dark that is in the X750. That's totally readable. Definitely recoverable. Very water resistant. I mean, look at this. Like, you can see the center lost some of the purple, but you can see every continuation of every line. Now, because I've now tested a couple of Iron-Gall inks, I wanted to see what would happen if I gave the ink more time to be on the paper. Now, this is Tomoe River, which again loves to let ink slide away when you add more water. I put it in that 2.3 millimeter pilot parallel, and this is after a day. And I pretty much like dunked this whole page in water, ran it under the faucet, and look at that. You can see it still has a little bit of that purple. See? And you can still see shading in it. So clear. Very there. In fact, it looks quite lovely just like this. And then I did another page where, again, like this whole bottom bit, I ran under the faucet. But this bit, I kept dry. I mean, it's beautiful the way it can darken. And it looks great in the parallel. But anyways, I wanted to see what even the most wash-awayable paper would do after just a day. So, something to consider. Now, on the next three papers, I only used the 0.6 stub, except to write the name. Now, here, let me get that out of the way. Here, I mean, this is the world's worst 20-pound copier paper. At this point, I've set my expectations really low. But I also want you to see this. Is there spread? Yes, yes there is. But really not much. That's not much. I mean, it doesn't even look as broad as that X750. It's doing pretty well so far. And if you come in close, you'll see that there's a woolliness, but you don't get feathering. There's really not much feathering. You see a little bit like here, the first L. And even that's kind of like, you know, it's like, do I want to call it that? You still retain some shading, which is nice. It took 2.5 seconds to dry. When you realize this is an Iron-Gall, that does make sense. And you do get a bit of a woolliness, but I really love these dark, dusty, dusky purples, and it definitely retains that here. I really liked it. Now, this paper tends to bleed like crazy. Nah. I say maybe there's some echo. Look, with that X750, you get some stuff nearly coming through, but it's really just dots. That's lovely. This is fantastic. I mean, I can't remember the last time we had results quite like this. It's really good. Now, the more absorbent papers tend to suck ink in, make it harder to wash it all out. So generally we do have more remaining on more absorbent papers, but look at this. Look at how clear that is. You can even see like a tiny bit of shading in this gray as well. And this was on here maximum 20 minutes. You can see a bit of the purple easily washing away. But that gray is very clear, very there, very solid. Feather didn't explode. Absolutely recoverable. Now this Mead Notebook Paper, it's very thin, it's very inexpensive, it's very common for American school children. And lately it's been outperforming this 20-pound paper. And here I think it kind of did again. You can see, again, the spread wasn't quite as much. The line width, pretty solid. And again, it's not quite as woolly as it was before either, and you do get a little bit of shading. Looks lovely. 1.5 seconds to dry. And again, I don't know if you'd really call it feathering per se. I mean, like most of it looks like this, you know? And then you'll get like, oh, look at the M. You know, like, oh, it's not, they're not huge, they're not all over. It's quite subtle. It's not distracting in the slightest. It's lovely. And look at this. You get maybe a little something in the scrubby. That's it. Even that medium, you sort of get like a vague impression of it, but that's it. No bleed. Absolutely no bleed. Fantastic. Now, this paper does tend to freak out sometimes when you add water. And it kind of did in texture, but that's it. Look at this. Again, you can even see some bits of shading in this gray. It did lose the purple. Very clear, very there. Didn't feather, didn't explode. I like how you can see these little like halos of color around the dots. That's pretty. This would be a fantastic pairing if you have like a chemistry lab notebook, you know, like the ones they gave us in high school. This would be great. Very water resistant. Can put up with this very cheap paper. Highly recommend it for that use. Now lastly is Moleskine, which I hate. It is my nemesis. It is the bane of my existence. I mean, we've seen just how well this ink has done. Even on like this really cheap stuff. You can get like a ream of this at the pharmacy, this Mead paper, for like 99 cents. This, a notebook of this size, costs like between $12 and $15. Ooh, look, you get a little shading. And we bring it in, and look at this really gross texture. It's really icky. I mean, it looks like a towel that was wrung out, but you like let the threads split because you were wringing it so far. It's just, ugh. And it took 5 seconds to dry, which is weird because obviously it was absorbent. And then, look at this. Try and hold this still, but I'm incredibly caffeinated right now. This is what I mean by big distracting feathers. Look at the E or any of the letters in theirs. Not. Less. Worst. These big spikes coming off. And the thing is, they show up in every single letter. Every single letter. And actually, I'd say that there's more spread than there is on the Mead. It's... Why? Now, you don't get a lot of bleed. In fact, you get almost none. You get, like, hints of stuff with that X750. So, I guess there's that. But, I mean, is that all that impressive when the stuff that you have to look at is that? Not so much. Now, the water test, it seemed to feather twice. I mean, look at how much it feathered there. And weirdly, it kind of retained some of the purple, but not much. And I'd say this had maybe 15 minutes to dry. All the purple was gone, but it isn't for a product. Anyways, there you go for your consideration. K.W.Z's Iron-Gall purple by the name of Gummiberry. As someone who grew up in the 90s, you ever watch Gummy Bears? That's what it reminds me of. But anyways, It's an Iron-Gall. Great resistance. Did fabulously on cheap papers, but on needlessly overpriced paper, hence Moleskine, it did terrible. Premium papers, like legit premium, oh, Fabriano. Looks great. Fantastic. So well behaved. Really love the color. Highly recommend you try some of this stuff. Yeah, just, it's great. But as always, Iron-Gall, clean your pens diligently. Keep an eye on it. Don't leave it in a pen for like 6 months. Everyone will regret it. But yeah, anyways, for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.